Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So today I am going to change the rear sprocket, actually replace it with a 42 tooth. Standard on the Honda CRF300L is a 40 tooth. This is a little bit bigger. It's going to gear my bike down a little bit. I got this from CRFsonly.com. They offer these JT Sprockets, which are very good sprockets. And also I got a hub saver double lock bolt kit. So I'm going to put the new bolts in. New sprocket. This should gear me down and make it a lot better off-road and actually give it a little more RPM on-road, but sometimes that's better because it actually get up to speed quicker. All the gears will be a little bit lower. So now let's take the sprocket off the bike and put this on. Okay, so the first thing is a tip that I want to show you guys that I learned a long time ago. It actually comes in pretty handy. Kind of hard wrestling this thing around sometimes to loosen these bolts. And this is a pretty good way of doing it. Now these bolts won't be so bad because I don't think they're tapered bolts into the sprocket like the ones we're going to put on. But the tip is leave it on the bike, put your bike in gear, and then put your 14mm wrench and your 5mm Allen wrench on, and then just go ahead and break all the bolts loose while it's on the bike. You don't have to take them off. All you want to do is break them loose. Well, that actually was easier than I figured. So they're not hard to break off, and it's because they're not the tapered ones. The tapered ones can be a lot harder. Now we'll go ahead and take the bike out of gear real quick here. And we'll rotate this around so we can get to the other 3 bolts. Stick it back in gear. Now all I'm doing is just breaking them loose. It'll make it easier than trying to handle it and break these loose. So that was actually really easy. Now we'll just take this wheel off the bike so we can get to the sprocket. Okay, so when breaking this loose, we have a 17mm wrench we put on this side, and on the opposing side, we have a 24mm socket. And I'm just going to use the impact to buzz the nut off the other side. Remember taking your spacers off how they came off so you can put them back on the same way. Just tap the bolt with your hand, pull the bolt out. Now if we just push this forward, we can take this chain off. And then I always like to try to just loop the chain back this way to keep it out of your way while you pull the wheel back, like so. If you take the caliper off the other side, just slide it back, it comes right off. Makes it easier to get the wheel out. Now we don't want to lose these spacers here. And we also want to wipe the dirt off and grime off of these and the axle before we put it back in. Just keep your spacers to the same side, even though I think that these spacers on the 300L is going to be the same spacers on each side, which they are. Okay, so now these will be pretty easy because we already have them broke loose. We'll take our 14mm wrench, 5mm Allen. I went ahead and put it on this little driver just to make it quicker to take them off. And there is washers on these also, because I keep dropping them down in there. So definitely you can see here the difference in the tapered hole compared to these holes. So if you order this JT Sprocket, you definitely have to order the bolt kit that's made for it. Otherwise, your stock bolts are not going to work on that sprocket. That's why they call it double locking, I'm sure, is because it fits into this taper here. And that's like a double lock with the lock nut. So we can take this sprocket, sit it on here, set all of our bolts in. Now, as I said, these already have Loctite on them, so you don't have to do that. And these are a larger Allen wrench. Okay, so these are definitely larger. These are an 8mm Allen bolt. Get all of our bolts in. We need to go ahead and take and put our washer and our nut on the bottom of each one of these. Okay, well now we'll go ahead and tighten these up. One thing I want you to note is Allen bolts like this are not meant for you to tighten with the Allen. You tighten with the wrench. All this is for is to hold it so you can, when you're taking them off, you break it loose with the wrench, not with the Allen wrench, because the way this fits in this taper, that would be extremely hard to do without messing up your Allen bolt. So you always want to use the wrench to do your tightening. Right now I'm just going to run them down with this. Also, the nuts for these are a 12mm wrench. Okay, now I'm going to repeat the same thing. I will not tighten these, as I said, you tighten them with a wrench, but I will not tighten these until I put it back on the bike. It just makes it easier to hold this from trying to turn, and I can just put it in gear, take my wrench, tighten these nuts on the back. Okay, so I know that my sprocket is a larger diameter, which means the wheel is going to have to go further forward. So I'm going to have to move the adjuster bolts in further. With a 12mm wrench, you break them loose. And a 10mm wrench is what you tighten these with, but you should be able to do it by hand unless they're, almost seized up or something. Just go ahead and crank them all the way in. After I get my wheel on, I can adjust these back out to where they need to be. Okay, so now we're ready to put our wheel back on. We want to go ahead and put our brake caliper into place. It actually fits on a notch right here. There's a groove in the back side of the caliper. Like that, kind of holds it into place. One thing you want to make sure of is never hit the brakes whenever you're doing this, because if you ever hit the rear brake pedal, it's going to squeeze these pads together, and then you'll never get it on. You would have to pry the pads back apart to get it on there. So, okay, we'll go ahead and work our wheel in. I go at an angle like this, works pretty good. And then around the caliper. Just set it to where we're touching the pads. Our disc is starting to go in the pads. Make sure we have our spacer in before we slide this into the swing arm. And make sure the bottom of the chain is on first. All my spacers are in. My brake caliper is locked into place. Now we should be able to just raise the wheel up into place. It's easier to now go ahead and put the chain on before we put the axle bolt in. Now we can take our axle bolt, make sure our notch is the same right here, our marker. Go ahead and slide our axle bolt through, like so. Put our spacer back on the other side, and then our nut. So now that when we tighten these, we just take our 8mm Allen wrench, our 12mm wrench, put them in here and just hold them. I'll tighten these three and then tighten the other three after I turn the wheel. You can actually take a torque wrench and torque these if you'd like. I usually don't, because I've just done enough of them over the years that kind of know where I want them. Now I'll turn it, tighten the other three, we'll be good to go. Okay, now as far as setting your chain, they say 2 to 2¼ inch with it on the side stand, which I think we're going to be pretty close anyway. See, if you have a ruler that would fit down in there, there's a notch on these 300Ls that you can put a ruler down in to do this. I just don't have a ruler to fit in there right now. So we're about 2 inches of free play, so pretty close. So we'll go ahead and set it right here. We do the same on both sides. We want to set it both the same, and we should be good. Just make sure that our 10mm bolt is back out against our adjuster right there. Run this in till it's tight, Now, there's different ways of doing this part. You can they make a tool to go from the center of this up to your front of your swing arm, and you can measure it that way. What I do is I just take my calipers and put right here to here and measure the distance, set the other side exactly the same. Then I know I'm 100% perfect. So I will take my calipers, set them just like that, lock them, and I set the other side exactly the same. Okay, now whenever we tighten this axle up, we want to make sure that it stays all the way up against these bolts, the adjuster bolts. So the way I do it is I take a grease rag or just a shop towel, whatever you got, put it in there between the chain and the sprocket, and then roll it back. And this will put the chain and the sprocket there, and it actually pulls the wheel up forward, holds it tight against here. Then I can tighten these two up. So I take my 17 millimeter, my 24 millimeter wrench, tighten this up, and then we need to torque that nut on the other side to the factory specs. Okay, so there we go. We got it installed. We're all tightened back up. We're ready to go. We'll take this thing out, try it out on the road, and just see how the gearing feels now compared to what it did. Okay, so I am out riding this bike, testing the sprocket. I can definitely tell that it's lower geared. It's not like a huge difference, but the takeoff going through the gears is definitely, you can feel more of a punch, so it's definitely got more torque. Checking the speed on the speedometer, how far it is off. You can see that this GPS here, hopefully you can see that, but anyway, it says 29, this says 29. Speedometer down here says 33. So we're talking 4 mile an hour difference. There were 29, 30, 31, and it says 35 around there. So about 4 mile an hour difference, 4 to 5. And I figured that's what it'd be, because that's what it was on my CRF300L. The speedometer was off about that far. And to me, you can get one of those Speedo RDs or whatever they're called. But I never needed it. I just realized that my, if I'm doing 30, I'm doing 34. If my speedometer says I'm doing 34, I'm doing 30, So actually may keep you from a speeding ticket because you're not going as fast as you think you are. But as far as get up and go, we definitely have more get up and go than before, no doubt about it. So I'm liking it. Feels good so far. Now, out on the highway, I don't know if I'll like it as good at high speed. We'll see. Okay, so I'm up to about 65 mile an hour. Get back up here where it was. 65. So I definitely noticed a lot more RPMs. We're a little over 7,000 RPMs at 65. The RPMs are definitely higher. We both say 65, and it says 70, 71 on there. So when you're at this speed, the speedometer is off about 5 to 6 miles an hour. Yeah, there it says 66. If I try to get it to 65 and hold it there, 71 on there. So 6 mile an hour off when we're up here at 65 miles an hour. The RPMs are definitely higher. My little indicator light is flashing, so I need to adjust that. But otherwise, I mean, it's not horrible. I'm not a person to go a lot of highway miles anyway, so I don't see it being a problem. But I think it's definitely going to be a lot better off-road with it. So there we have it. Okay, guys, that is it for the install of the JT Sprocket from CRFsonly.com, the sprocket and the bolt kit. I will post a link to these below. That's how easy it is to change the gearing on your Honda CRF300L or Honda CRF250L. Really nothing to it. Thank you guys for watching. As I said, click the link below, click the thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll catch you all in the next ride. Ride on.